Hey everyone, President shutdown update. A lot to talk about this week. We had to take a break last week because of office issues related to the coronavirus shutdown. But I'm back here with you on my home with a special update on the current coronavirus, all the hard work you expect us to do, even during this crisis. We've got a big ongoing documents that show that Hillary Clinton had a major cover-up going on her behalf, thanks to the FBI. And we're also in a big court with, believe it or not, Mayor Buttigieg, who doesn't want to testify to Judicial Watch. I guess that's no surprise, but something to update you on that. And then on top of it all, we have really startling new reporting, General Justice Department, showing that the FBI and Justice Department are a complete mess when it comes to major FISA gate fraud that goes way legal targeting of President Trump. So a lot to talk about. First, I know there are many people hurting right now because they are facing loss of employment or they've already lost their employment. I know there's been this giant stimulus pass that might ease temporarily the concerns of services and will help some people out with some extra cash. But the best way to get people whole again is to get them back to work. And I am continuously concerned about this national shutdown. I think the governors in many states are overacting, and they should allow us to try to get back to work. Where appropriate, schools should try to get back to schooling children. And the country it can't be that the way to solve the pandemic crisis is still our economy. The employment numbers this week, 30-day window, the president suggested that we maintain social distancing. Then we are facing 20 to 30 million unemployed sick. I don't want your family to get sick. But the solution to protecting people can't be destroying our economy. It just can't be. There's got to be a way of moving forward while taking care of people's health and maintaining separation or whatever steps are necessary to allow us to try to get back to work. Here in Columbia, you're threatened with jail if you violate their social separation standards or their stay-at-home orders by the mayor. And it's similar in other states. I was just outraged earlier when I saw a local official in Dallas solicit people to turn in businesses, non-essential businesses that maybe operate. I mean, is this where we've come to? And this is my perspective on things. The president last week wanted to begin to reopen the government. Reopen the country. And he got pushed back from the anti-Trump forces in the media because they attack him no matter what he does and what he said. And it's pretty clear that the public health at the federal level didn't have to happen. And so in order to convince the president to keep on pushing for a national shutdown, they came up with, and I'm going to say they made them up, but they used numbers that were dramatic, that said, even with mitigation, we're facing 100 to 240,000 deaths. Completely out of the blue, these numbers show up. We hadn't heard this before. And so what they're telling us, so they say that in order to cover him, I believe, into issuing this 30-day push, which allows states or gives states cover to keep people in their homes. But even now, the numbers aren't what they're supposed to be, in the sense that the one day they say it's 100,000 deaths, even with mitigation. Just think about that. Let's say the Chinese deaths are off by a factor of 10. So we're going to be 3 times as many people dying as defining the use of hydrochloroquine? Are they using people using masks, which would, in theory, curtail the spread? I mean, there's mitigation and there's mitigation. And if I were the president, I would be asking each and every day, what is for this continued destruction of our economy? And I want to be clear here. The CDC guidelines and the 30 days to stop the spread, there's nothing in there that's objectionable. I want you to review them. They're on the president's website, whitehouse.gov, cdc.gov's website, see the mitigation guidelines. There's nothing in those guidelines, there's nothing in the 30-day to stop the spread analysis that says shut down everyone in your state. So these shutdowns you're facing, and I think the president should separate from this because he's not responsible for these shutdowns. The governors are making the decisions. Your governors are destroying your economies. And you've got to ask them, why? What is the basis for doing this? New York is in a terrible state right now. There's no doubt about that. But even in New York, it's limited to a certain area of New York. And then, of course, you have this hydrochloroquine, which is being demonstrated time and time again by good health officials. And I ask you to pray for everyone involved here, the victims, the doctors, and the politicians. And the officials, the government officials advising them. It must be a terrible burden and stress to have to think of handle how to handle this crisis. We should provide, pray for them, so that the Lord at least provides them wisdom and helps ease their burden in this time of stress. But we're also citizens. And our economy is being destroyed. There are real health consequences, as the president noted, to people losing their jobs. The government can't spend enough money to make up for the businesses that are going to be destroyed. And it isn't just the restaurant industry, it isn't just the wine industry, it's our healthcare industry. Doctors' practices all over the country are being harmed by this shutdown. They can't practice normally. There's a state of Massachusetts how a big healthcare system up there is laying off people. We just have to have a different approach. If I were the president, I would be saying, look, one of the consequences of the pandemic is this tendency to panic and shut down our economy. That is dangerous. So we have to do several things to protect ourselves. We got to care for the sick, sure that others aren't sickened and reasonably able to. And B, we got to make sure our economy is able to function. It's simply unacceptable that our economy is shut down. You can't cure or end a pandemic by killing our economy. And we're not allowed to question these public officials. I sent out a tweet. How dare you send that email, that tweet around? I don't even say anything negative about it. I just thought it was interesting. But we didn't elect Dr. Fauci. We didn't elect Dr. Birx, who, I watch and listen to intently. I think they've got important things to say and advice. But the governors need to protect their citizens. Why isn't this hydrochloroquine being deployed more aggressively is what I'd like to know. If left to their own devices, the CDC, the FDA, and the rest, we would be figuring out some of these drug uses or having them deployed at all months from now. And thankfully, the president, at least on hydrochloroquine, he lit a fire under the FDA. The FDA was stalling it. You had governors banning doctors from prescribing it for off-label use, even though it's perfectly appropriate. Perfectly appropriate. And the FDA said, yes, this can be used for patients outside of clinical trials. In India, they've approved the use of hydrochloroquine, or also approved hydrochloroquine for the use of asymptomatic family members of those asymptomatic household members of people with the coronavirus. So if your family member has it in India, you can take hydrochloroquine as a prophylactic. So what is the lesson there? If I were the president, I get on the horn to the FDA and say the following: we need to deploy this drug in an emergency basis, on an emergency basis, to the following groups of people: frontline healthcare, including EMS and emergency personnel like police, those poor sailors and enlisted military personnel anywhere, certainly the ones on the Roosevelt, the passengers on those cruise liners down in Florida. They should all be getting this drug as a prophylactic. Will it work? No. But it is used as a prophylactic for malaria. India has approved it as a prophylactic. And given the safety of the drug, it doesn't mean there are no risks associated with taking the drug. It should be more widely deployed. And I'm not offering advice. I see what the government did. I see what the FDA did in allowing it to use it on an emergency basis. There's evidence that it can provide prophylactic protection. So what's the holdup? And he had a doctor who's risking his life every day. He and his family has 3 doctors in his family. He's taken as a prophylactic himself. So I don't mean to belabor the point, but this is the sort of thing we ought to be pushing hard on. You walk around Washington, D.C., the city's dead. I'm sure it's dead in your jurisdiction, your town as well. Unless you're lucky enough to be in a state that is inflicted with a governor who's fearful. Look, I'm not saying the governors are doing anything malicious or malicious. I'm not saying that. But the solution can't be to destroy our economy, to raise the village in order to save it. I can't. Our healthcare system is being harmed by this shutdown. Jobs are being harmed by this shutdown. Lives are being harmed by this shutdown. And the thinking is there'll be a V-shaped recovery. I don't know the economics here. I hope it's a V-shaped recovery. What is it? It means that we're doing here, right? And then the pandemic, and it went down here. And so the thinking is once released or the shutdown ends, it will go right back up. So it's an awful big risk. And in the meantime, people will have work. And if it goes straight back up, there are going to be many, many businesses who will be unable to open. So you can be sure that Judicial Watch is doing what it can to investigate this. We've got the FOIAs and thinking about the issues that you're thinking about, asking questions about, and we'll be doing that. And certainly we're monitoring the constitutional issues with these extraordinary shutdowns. This is a public experiment, folks. Never in the history of man has government completely shut down economies like this. Suppress a contagion. You're a carrier, or something like that. But once you get into shutdowns, they're indiscriminate, meaning everyone has to stay at home, and long-lasting, meaning it's indefinite. In D.C., it's through April 24th. In Virginia, across the river, it's in Maryland. There's no end date. Sure, I don't know what the shutdown schedule is for your the woods. Now, Judicial Watch, we've got court deadlines to meet. I mean, so we got to work. So we're essential in that regard. But think of what's going on here in Washington, D.C. Everywhere in the city, everywhere in the local environment here, no one can go to work. practically speaking. Other than if you're the government, I got something to say on that in a few minutes. Obviously, that's true. You can see from this video. But all of civic society that monitors government is shut down. It's really interesting, and I don't know if it's I haven't followed at the state level if there have been furloughs, but are you aware of the government furloughing anyone? Are you aware of the government laying anyone off? Because the government ain't working, folks. They're the government that are need and necessary, and it's pretty clear they're working 24/7. Certainly exposes how much of our government is unneeded, doesn't it? Because you see the parts of the government that are needed in this crisis. The rest, it's a luxury and a waste often. But they're shutting down everything, and they're still getting paid in the government too. And I talked about this last week. FBI has told us its FOIA office is shut down. They're still getting paid, but they're telework. And because they, quote, can't come to work, the FBI was an essential part of our government, but they can't come to work. So no transparency during this key part of our country's history. This is a crisis that will be spoken about and written about for generations. But if you want to ask the government what it's up to, at least the FBI, they're saying, we can't give you anything. We just learned from the State Department today, too. Not today, I think it was yesterday, in one of our cases, about Spygate, the abuse of the State Department to target Trump. They've shut down their FOIA operation indefinitely as well. Word that any of the people who are working in the FOIA operation are getting paid or not, I bet you they are. Like I said, I'm not aware of the federal government cutting off the pay of. I tell you what, if the government had shut down its employees, one of us, we'd be back at school, we'd be back at work. And I'm not saying we go back to school at work without any sensible guidelines to protect ourselves from this pandemic. But the priority has got to be getting us back to work while protecting the public health. So the State Department has shut down its FOIA, which means we can't get anything on Joe Biden, which means we can't get anything on the Spygate abuse of President Trump, all that scandal stuff with Biden and the China connections to Biden. Wouldn't that be interesting to figure out right about now? Huh? Are we allowed to mention the virus? I'm not quite sure. In the sense that it was the result of a lab accident or something purposeful in China. But today we're saying, oh, well, yeah, that actually may have actually happened. So I track as to when I'm not supposed to say things in the anti-Trump world. And I thought of this, and I've talked about this previously in our update. A lot of this has to do with a lot of what's going on is guided by the maniacal, fanatic Trumpism of the legacy media. They hate Trump, and everything we get a week of suppression. Governors who hate Trump telling doctors they can't prescribe it in reaction. Not about the science or about the health of the. Oh no, I'd like to know how many lives will have been lost as a result of the media and attack. And frankly, the bureaucratic attack on the use of this hydrochloroquine and the associated Z-Pack approach. You know, we're not allowed to make comments because we're, quote, non-experts. You know, the experts were telling us we didn't have to wear masks. The experts were telling us we didn't have to wear masks. The experts were telling us to go out and socialize. Now the experts are telling us the exact opposite. I'm worried. I'm worried about this disease. We got to get back to work. We got to get back to work. And I think the president's going to come back and make this clear. I just, you know, he said thing, and he's going to come back around to this. I know he will. But in the end, governor's decisions, don't you know? It's the governor's decisions. Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott, they held fast. They tried to maintain a sensible approach. Pressure on them was too much. What is it we do? We get the testing done to allow us to figure out who's sick and who's not. Deploy the troops that are best that we have. That's how we save the country. That's how we protect our health in the long run with a strong economy. Because our medical system will collapse as surely as night day if our economy collapses. And guys and gals, it's collapsing. It's collapsing. There's no upside to this, economically speaking. Gas is cheap, but you can't drive anywhere. So much is going to keep on pushing on this issue, or at least I am. You can follow my Twitter feed to kind of keep you up to date as to what's going on here. But they went through the anthrax. They went through a postal facility here in Washington, D.C. called Brentwood, and 2 postal workers, officials in that facility, died as a result of anthrax. And came in and they tested that postal facility, and they found it was hot for anthrax. And despite knowing so, they allowed workers to stay there and work there. And even after they cleared out the building, they sent workers back in to push mail out. So ultimately we get the information or what we wanted out of the lawsuit, but we represented all those workers. So I any lessons from it. We'll be tracking that. Obviously, we'll see what happens over the next few months. Hopefully, common sense prevails and we start to get people back to work. But coming up also is, actually not coming up, that's the problem, is the lack of accountability for the criminal spying in place over at the FBI. We had the admission that the FBI gave at least 2 fraudulent warrants. The report makes it clear they knew that it was garbage, and they knew that you act FBI, at least one FBI agent targeting Carter and therefore Donald Trump. So nothing's been done on that. Nothing. Durham hasn't prosecuted anyone. Attorney General Barr hasn't prosecuted anyone. I don't see any evidence that anything serious is going to be done. Even with the IG report, Judicial covered much of what we already knew. IG just reconfirmed it in detail that we weren't able to get access to because we can't question people in person like the IG can. So the IG followed up with another analysis of the broader FISA application process in the Justice Department, FBI, and this report devastating. So I'm going on memory here, but the IG report is available on the website of the IG of the Justice Department. We can provide a link here, guys. They went and they picked up out of 709 FISA warrants. They did a select sample of 29 FISA applications. And when you create a FISA warrant application, there's something called Woods procedure, which means you got to make are checking out. So when you present a fact to the court justifying a secret spy warrant on an American citizen, you've got all your federal. And the FBI, DOJ found that of the 29, all of them were deficient in that regard. All of them. In fact, 4 of them, they didn't even have documentation, and they were unclear if at least in 3 of them, I think, if it even existed. And why is it important? And I'm going to read the detail here. Computer here. I'm going to put my glasses on. So it won't really help me here. Read. I got to sit back for it. Additionally, for all 25 applications with Wood file, because remember there were 29, but they couldn't find them. We have reviewed to date. We identified facts stated in the FISA applications that were A, not supported by any documentation in the Woods file, not clearly corroborated by the supporting documentation in the Woods file, or inconsistent with the supporting documentation in the Woods file. And that's, by the way, a nice way for saying lies. And of course, the goal and the reason these rules are in there are to make sure that the applications to the courts to spy on Americans, this awesome power, are scrupulously accurate. Scrupulously accurate. And they went back and asked about the supervision. IG did also looked at the supervision of the National Security Division of the Department. The senior Justice Department officials are supposed to be working with these people and monitoring them in the FBI, by checking and double checking them. And they found that the FBI had an opportunity to clean them up. And even when they found something or looked at it, they didn't use it for any management purpose. So you not only have this common fraud going on, you also had no one watching the store in the leadership of the FBI or Justice Department. So President Trump and Carter Page are crime victims, but now we have evidence 29. At least there's evidence there's 29 other Americans who are crime victims, meaning someone lied about them or failed to follow the rules in telling the court they had double checked and checked. They got to certify this stuff to be true when they go to the FISA court. And this IG report shows that was not done. And it was casual. And it helps explain why they targeted Trump so easily. Because they didn't care about the rules, because the rules weren't being enforced. They thought as long as they can get a court to sign on it, who cares? And what's the response of the Justice Department and the FBI to the efforts against their employment issues with some of the other FBI agents involved here? Executions. And no evidence that any prosecutions are forthcoming. So the FISA gate crisis continues, and what's going to happen? Nothing. Adam is focused on doing his coup attack against the president by turning it into a coronavirus-based coup. Oh, I know, he said he wants to impeach the president, but I'm sure you've seen the news, they're going to have a commission to investigate the coronavirus handling. What do you think that's about? And why do I say shift? Because he's the Intelligence Committee. He has oversight in theory over this. And it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Certainly he shouldn't be head of the Intelligence Committee given his ethical misconduct and his abuse of power. But Congress is going to do the job. And the Justice Department and the FBI is being asked to investigate itself. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And if to the degree it happens, it's going to be weak tea. And this is why I think the president, and I don't like special counsels generally speaking, especially the special counsel regulations that had special counsel basically answering to no one and uncontrolled. But the president has the power to appoint a special counsel. He can do it himself. He can do it himself directly. And I cover everything if I were him. I'd say special counsel. I want to Spygate, and I want to investigate Hillary Clinton, because the two are connected. Because the same Justice Department that was protecting Hillary Clinton was targeting me. They were coordinating with Hillary Clinton on me. And it helps explains why the cover-up of her email. How do I know that? Well, we have more evidence. Believe it or not, that was a good plan. But it's how it goes, isn't it, everyone? We have new documents given by the FBI. This is before the shutdown. These struck emails that we've been getting FBI as they've been stringing us along at the rate of 500 pages a month or so. Of course, we don't even get the full 500 pages. I think this is 180 pages of the 500 they gave us. So, so they've withheld more than they've given to us. But this is an astonishing release in that it instructs own emails. It shows that there was a month's delay between the finding of the Weiner laptop that had all of the Clinton emails on it and them getting a subpoena for the said emails. Now, I know they mentioned that in the IG report, and the IG report suggested that that delay, it wasn't unreasonable to suggest that that delay was caused by Strzok's animus for Trump, because he was focused on Trump at that time, and he didn't want to get involved with Clinton. On the 23rd, 2016, Strzok sends an email to Page with a Weiner timeline document. Now, who's Anthony Weiner? Anthony Weiner, if you don't remember, was the husband of Huma Abedin, who was Hillary Clinton's confidant, top aide at the State Department. Abedin was the only other State Department official, as best we can tell, who had a secret email account on the Clinton email server. Abedin's emails were found all over on, and who knows, and Clinton's emails accordingly, found on Weiner's laptop. They shared the laptop. So on 9/26/2000, this is in the dead most important part, dead center, most important part of the presidential campaign. They get a search warrant for the Weiner laptop, the New York State office, New York office in the FBI. 9/28. This is what there's a Strzok talking. They find potential Clinton-related material, MYE material, mid-year exam related material. There's a conference call between the New York office of the FBI on 9/29 and Strzok. And 19. New York office completes carving, which means it seems to me that they carved out the emails they thought were related to the Clinton email scandal. 10/21/16. Again, the tells the DOJ, what about these emails? Because no one was looking at them. 10/25/16, DOJ conversation with the deputy director of the FBI. Who was deputy director? Andrew McCabe. Next day, there's a conference call with the DOJ, the Strzok team investigating Clinton, and the New York office of the FBI. And they decide, oh, maybe we should look at this. The next day, Comey on the 27th, and on 10/30, they get the search warrant, get the documents, because they didn't get a search warrant, evidently. They just got a search warrant for the Weiner laptop because of his sexual predator investigation. And then they finally get the documents. It only happened after pushback and pushback over the course of a month. So Hillary Clinton is protected for a full month. Peter Strzok and the FBI from it being publicly discussed that all of her Clinton emails, there were a bunch of emails on the Weiner laptop. Now, Judicial Watch did get the emails, at least much of what we believe, the emails from the Weiner laptop. They were produced to us. It was classified information on Anthony Weiner's laptop. We proved that. Strzok pretends to have reviewed it clearly, the thousands of emails in a record in a pace that was that's not believable. Meaning he didn't really review them. Because remember that Comey sent that letter to the Congress, and then we found some stuff, and then he had to retract it later that, oh, well, maybe it's not terribly important after all. Went ballistic. Believe it or not, I'm sympathetic to Clinton on the FBI's abuse of the 2016 election. I mean, Comey was a disaster. He thought he Solomon. He conducts an investigation that was fraudulent. He knows there's a cover-up, so to protect his reputation, his FBI's reputation, he holds this press conference in July saying, "Oh, well, there's going to be no prosecution. She's the worst person in the world." His job. He should have just said, "I'm not recommending prosecution." And then they do this fake investigation and suppress evidence, as demonstrated here. And in the middle of the election, he sends a darn letter to the Congress, again suggesting more criminal activity by Hillary Clinton. And I believe there was criminal activity by Hillary Clinton. Comey's handling of the investigation was deplorable. It was political. Frankly, the only reason the FBI was doing much of anything was because people were complaining it wasn't doing anything. Embarrassed by Judicial Watch was doing more work than they were. We were questioning witnesses. They were using our FOIA documents to question people, folks. Can you believe that? Our FOIA documents were the basis for the FBI investigation of Clinton. So, Strzok was forwarding garbage anti-Trump information within the FBI. So you've got a news article called "FBI Making Inquiry to Ex-Trump Campaign Managers Form Ties." Same day, he forwards the page a Mother Jones, which is a far-left publication. A veteran spy has given the FBI information alleging a raw operation to elevate Donald Trump, which, as you know, is bunk. So that's what Strzok is doing, sending around smear jobs against the. Oh, by the way, while he's doing this, he's supposedly reviewing all those emails. By the way, the 300,000 or so that were found on the Weiner laptop, allegedly. Incredible. I encourage you to go to our website for all the emails. I can go through because this is a case where you've got to go look at the information, because I could spend 2 hours just talking about the emails we found just in this one release that we. But go ahead, and you got maybe all these FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors nothing to do and are teleworking. Maybe they can go to Judicial Watch's website and look at our material. Maybe they can go over to the State Department and look at that report, that violations related to mishandling classified and other sensitive material on Hillary Clinton's email system, some of which were purposeful. Maybe they can look at that, or they can pull all these emails showing obstruction and cover-up in the FBI and Justice Department. But I encourage you to do that as well. So another issue is also this week, at least, on Hillary Clinton is, now you may recall that Clinton is subject to testimony in our Benghazi email records case. Federal judge ordered that she be deposed within 75 days, which runs on May 16th. And rather than agree to be deposed, she filed a unique and an emergency mandamus action, which is more against the court than even against Judicial Watch, trying to get the appellate court to overturn and protect her from having to be deposed. And her argument is that she has the indisputable right not to be deposed. She's too important a government official, or a government official in this case, to be deposed by little old Judicial Watch about this. And you think I'm kidding? Go look at her plea. The court's got significant questions about use of the email system to FOIA. And what did her lawyers say in this brief? That questions are beside the point. How do you like them apples? So the coronavirus crisis hasn't stopped litigation. Certainly, it didn't stop Hillary Clinton from seeking emergency court action in an effort to keep out of question by our colleagues, my attorney colleagues. Ramona Kotka would be the lawyer questioning her. And Ramona and the legal team now are work testifying. And it's due today. And the courts ordered the response of Hillary Clinton to that, the reply, due on April 10th. So we'll be fully briefed within a few weeks. Actually, next week at this point. Right? And then the court will decide. The court will hold a hearing. It's an appellate court. These days, the courts have been holding telephonic hearings. But because it's a mandamus, they're often cited in terms of consideration by the appellate court. So we'll see what happens. But I just want to highlight that Judicial Watch is keeping up the heavy lifting during the coronavirus. We are an assistance in that regard, that's for sure. And along those lines, we filed an opposition to South Bend. Yes, we're in an email fight with South Bend, Indiana. Why is that? Because Mayor Pete Buttigieg was mayor of South Bend when they implemented a scheme to provide to provide IDs to illegal aliens. And Peter didn't want the city's fingerprints on it, so they had an outside nonprofit entity hand out the voter, excuse me, I keep on saying voter IDs, and I know that's maybe like a Freudian slip, but it isn't. To hand out they had a third party hand out these IDs for illegal aliens. And so they thought that around the people's right to know by doing this. But, Judicial Watch is smarter than the average bear. And we asked for the records about this process, this project, and we've gotten a runaround. We seek the indications of Buttigieg related to the creation of this ID card for illegal aliens. And we wanted to know whether personal emails were being used to conduct official government business, a la Hillary Clinton. Now, the ID card was created by La Casa de Amistad, a local not-for-profit corporation, and this is what they do. In June, there was a report that this ID or community resident card was a, quote, novel approach that other cities want to replicate. And of course, Buttigieg at the time was a candidate for the presidency. And the report Amistad on the program. He was even taking credit for it, it looks like. So we've already posed officials in South Bend about this, and we got to talk to Mayor Buttigieg. They didn't say it in so many words. Oh, they did say it in so many words, but they didn't say it directly. He's the mayor. It's his emails, and we should be able to depose it. But he doesn't want it to be deposed. And we explain why his testimony is necessary, because we want to figure out whether there are records there, how they were maintained, what happened to them when he left, were they deleted, a la Hillary Clinton, and what was he was supposed to do in terms of creating and retaining records. Only Mayor Buttigieg answers to these questions. He was mayor when the records would have been created. He was mayor when we submitted our request and they stonewalled it. In addition, he was mayor when the city responded to our request with virtually, and he's an obvious fact witness. So we've got a court battle right now. And they gave us 2 city witnesses who, quote, didn't have the knowledge. That's why they say in so many words you should talk to Buttigieg. They're playing games with his email, asked the court to allow Buttigieg to testify, and it just shows you what it is we need to do in order to get the truth out. We have a right to know about the mayor's efforts to work with a private entity to provide, to make it easier for illegal aliens to reside in the United States. This is why this is an important issue. And we're supposed to follow, aren't we? And we've got mayors working with third parties to help aid and abet criminal activity. Yeah, criminal activity. So this is an important FOIA case, or Access to Records Act case. So I don't know how the court's going to rule there. It's before a state court judge, and we should get a ruling pretty soon on that. So Mayor Buttigieg, Hillary Clinton, like Adam Schiff, as I told you about, he's opposing our effort to get information from him about his subpoenas of phone records of innocent Americans. While doing that, as I note, he's up with more witch hunt type investigations. It's just incredible. These officials want accountability for thee, but not for me, well, so to speak. So we'll be working hard there. But the reason I would keep on saying voter ID, because this coronavirus crisis, I don't want to skip this over because it was a big, the stimulus, the Corona bus, as I call it, the $2.2 trillion bill. Nancy Pelosi initially was trying to obviate or overturn the voter ID laws in 35 states in her initial plan. So the scheme was to impose a vote mail system across the nation with virtually no ability to check the voter ID of anyone voting by mail, and also impose national ballot harvesting. Now, thankfully, the president, the Republicans in the Senate were not playing that game, and they pulled it out. The compromise was to give extra money to a federal agency involved in election administration to help with states manage their elections during the coronavirus crisis. But what I'm telling you is that the left is trying to use the coronavirus crisis to undermine the security of our elections nationally. They're trying to get mail-in ballots for everybody and everyone, which necessarily leads to fraud. It's one of the worst. If you're trying to protect against fraud, the worst thing you can do is mail everyone a ballot and then not require any ID to vote by mail. I believe we should just have the elections normal, but the idea that we have this massive vote by mail scheme would be an abomination to clean elections. I say when I put it online, I use that. And they also want national ballot harvesting that would allow third parties to go around and collect ballots. Another for fraud. 35 states require voter IDs in order to vote, some type of voter ID. Pelosi's scheme is to overturn all of that with this national vote by mail scheme. So they lost this time. They're going to come back for whatever the next bill is, and they're going to come back and push and push and push. And I want you to know about it, and I want you to be calling your elected officials every time you think about the issue, both in your state and in your Congress. So your congressmen, your senators, your state legislators, and your governors. Voter ID laws. And if you live in a state you don't have a voter ID law, get them passed. Push for that. Because if you got, in our case, our studies found most recently 2.5 million extra names on the rolls. Are those names going to get ballots? You move from Virginia, they don't remove your name. Moves into the house after you and gets a ballot in your name. Not going to work. It's mighty tempting in terms of voter fraud, isn't it? That's why we need elections. We clean election rolls because dirty election rolls can mean dirty elections. We're going to see that readily with this giant push for voter mail, vote by mail. So that is, we're gonna lose our economy, our liberty, and our right to select our leaders all in a few months eventually if we don't watch it, folks. Don't you think? So I appreciate your patience. I hope this was a good substitute for our normal weekly update. I know I got as outraged as I normally do, even if I'm just sitting here in my house yelling at your screen here. But we've got a great team here that's working hard for you during this coronavirus crisis. We're trying to educate Americans not only about what's happening with the crisis, and we're doing there, but we're also doing the other that's essential. We just can't shut down oversight of during this crisis. So Judicial Watch is going to stand on elements for you. And our team is working as we speak, and we only do it with your support. So I encourage you to support Judicial Watch, if you aren't already, at judicialwatch.org. And of course, you can see all on our website at judicialwatch.org as well. And, not only support our work financially, but you should support our work by spreading the word about it. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're at Judicial Watch, we're at Tom Fitton. You can watch me on at Tom Fitton. We're on YouTube. Obviously, you're watching us here on YouTube and on Facebook as well, and on Instagram and on Twitter. Whatever social media platform you're on, it's likely we are on. And if we're not on it yet, you can grab our material and transmit it through that social media platform. That's how we educate Americans. That's why the left hates us. That's why they attack me. Because sometimes I tell the truth about things they don't like. And because of the wonders of the internet, we're able to reach an audience they can't control. So I encourage you to do our work not only directly, but by getting the word out. Because after all, Judicial Watch is an educational group. We're trying to educate people about what's happening. So to the degree you're able to help us do it, thank you. And I'll see you next time here. And in the meantime, I hope you're able to get to work. I hope you're financially sound. Most of all, I hope you stay healthy. Thank you very much.